Bring the kids, bring grandma and grandpa, heck, bring everyone, and come to the Mesquamaket Fall Fest in Westerly September 15th, 16th, and 17th at Mesquamaket State Beach. You'll find an array of great food trucks, arts and craft vendors, games, rides, and a Ferris wheel. Friday night, internet sensations the Jay Creek Cloggers will perform, as well as Ambrosia with special guest John Ford Coley. Saturday night, it's Mac McAnally, 10-time CMA Music Award winner. It's an endless summer at Mesquamaket Beach with Fall Fest. Mesquamaket.org.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caswell Cook, and welcome to Mesquamaket Tonight, which is the show that we broadcast on all of our social media networks for Mesquamaket Beach, the place that you guys all love if you're watching us or if you're here on our social media, especially on our Facebook page, where we have over 125,000 of you guys following us. So tonight, when we're doing this show, if you want to type in the comments below where you're watching from or when you come to Mesquamaket Beach, or if you love yacht rock as much as I do, just type it in the comments, and we're also going to bring on our special guest in just a moment. I'll tell you about who's playing at Fall Fest. We have some very special music. The 15th, 16th, and 17th of September is when Fall Fest takes place at the State Beach. It's our 13th annual, and we do the festival twice a year, so it's our 26th festival. So we finally got it down. We know what we're doing now. But coming up on the Friday night of the festival, we have Ambrosia with special guest John Ford Coley. And of course, John's no stranger to Mesquamaket Beach. He's probably played here over 10 times at this point over the years. Saturday night, we're really excited to welcome a bunch of bands, but we're having a band from Canada called The Short Walk to Pluto. And this band is great. Young kids, they've gone viral on the internet, and they've got like hundreds of thousands of followers. And this is their first time to the U.S. And they'll be opening for the great Mac McAnally. And we booked Mac several months ago, not knowing that Jimmy Buffett, was even ill. And so this is going to be a different type of experience, probably a cathartic experience. Mac, in addition to being a great songwriter and 10-time Country Music Award winner, Artist of the Year winner, he was in the Coral Reefer Band, for the last 30 plus years with Jimmy Buffett. And the last show Jimmy ever played was here in Rhode Island in July with Mac. And so he's going to be at Fall Fest, and I know it's going to be a night of tribute to Jimmy. So we're looking forward to that as well. And then, of course, we've got amusements, and we've got rides, and we've got great food. But he's waiting for us backstage, and Ben's going to bring him out. We're going to bring out the man, the myth, the legend from the band Ambrosia, Joe Puerta. Ben. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Ben. I hope you're there.
Oh, Ben's somewhere backstage. I know he is. He's our producer. So, Joe, where are you? Where are we talking to you? Where are you now?
I'm in the mountains in San Diego. Can you imagine that? You have to think of San Diego as inland from the city. We're up at 4,700 feet, and we have kind of like a little, I don't know if you call it a little ranch. We have a couple of horses and 13 goats, 5 cats, and a dog, and a duck as well.
And who takes care of them when you're
animals?
When you're on the road? Who takes care of all those animals?
We have my brother-in-law. We have a split-level house, and downstairs we built his own apartment, and that's his role. He's the groundskeeper here, and he takes care of them when we're gone. Yeah.
We just wanted to make sure somebody fed them when you came to Westerly next week.
Definitely, we are. They have a very, very well kept life. Our new duck is especially happy because he was just rescued recently by my wife. He was not doing very well at all, and now he has his own pond. He's got like a 5-star hotel here, so he's very happy.
Well, this is good. I like hearing that. This is something that the folks at home have no idea about this side of you, Joe.
I didn't have an idea about it a few years ago before we moved from where we were before, that it was going to develop in such a way. We were going to get a couple of horses, and then I found out, well, a horse has to have a companion, so we got a couple of goats, and then my wife found out there were a few more goats that were in distress, so let's get those. And then she's sort of an animal rescuer, so that's the latest rescue being the duck.
Well, we love to hear that. I wanted to tell you that you don't know, probably would never remember it, but you've actually been a guest on my show, The Caswell Cook Show, before. And I think it was, okay. And I have this, I used to do a public access show.
Okay.
And you guys, and it must have been 25 years ago, maybe 98,
Okay.
99. I was a kid and you were playing at this casino near us called Foxwoods.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I had
That
asked
is,
for
that's a while
a
ago. I kind of
while
do. I
ago.
remember that show. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yep.
so I was just going through all my old tapes and I've been getting them digitized. And I just yesterday said, I'm going to find that Ambrosia interview. It hasn't been seen. And
Was
so
it
I'm
like
going to
in the lobby
digitize.
of the hotel or something like that? Did you do it there at Foxwoods?
Yeah, I think it was like in the room where you guys played, and then I remember you had me on stage, and I've got a video somewhere of me singing one of your songs with you during sound check. Which
Really?
I was like,
Okay.
"Make a
Well,
wish,
there you go.
baby,"
Yeah.
and
Which
I
song
remember I
was it?
didn't quite know all the words, and so one of the guys in the band was trying to like say wash away the past, and it's a funny when I get that video of me at like age 20 something interviewing you guys all those years ago, I will send it to your wife so she can put it
Okay.
out on social media. It'll be
Shannon
funny.
is the archivist. She's incredible. She's collected. I never was a big collector of things. I wish I would have been, because it would have saved her a lot of trouble. But she's got posters from different parts of my career, going back to the very first tour I ever did. I was the bass player for a singer named Shai Coltrane, who had a big hit called Thunder and Lightning. It was a big hit song in the 73, 72, something like that. And then, going on, of course, Ambrosia. And then I did 7 years with Bruce Hornsby in the Range. That's where above me, you see that little gold statue. That's a Grammy we won for Best New Artist way back in 1980. 1986 Grammys. We were the Best New Artist. So that was a fun thing. So to kind of show the different aspects of everyone's career, we do the way it is in our show as a tribute to the time, because Bruce played with us for a short time. A matter of fact, the only song that we had on MTV, or when MTV was just starting, we did a video, and Bruce was our keyboard player, because that was the plan. He was going to be in the band, and he decided, you know what, I think I want to do my own thing. And then about that time, our band kind of went separate ways for a while. And he said, hey, you want to be my bass player? And I said, not doing anything else. I've been in Ambrosia since high school, practically, or, a band that evolved from my first original band, became gradually evolved into Ambrosia. But
So it's been over 50 years then.
Yes, 19, the first time we got together with the four people that became the first album band, that was 1970. We got together, and then we didn't put out our first album until 1975. We got our first agreement to sign to make an album was sometime in 73, and then the album recorded was in 1974. And at the end of 1974, a friend of ours, a very actually well-known and incredibly talented classical recording engineer, a guy named Gordon Perry, came to our house as we were getting ready to do the mix, and he had an album in his hands. He said, this is the greatest pop recording of all time, and the man who mixed this album must mix your album. And we were like, okay, what's the name of the album? He goes, it's called Dark Side of the Moon. And so
Alan Parsons.
So, well, who mixed it? And then the back said, Alan Parsons. Said, well, how do we get a hold of him? He says, well, he works at Abbey Road. So we called Abbey Road, and it just happened. He happened to be walking by the phone. They usually had a night watchman who picked up the phones, took messages, but there had been a disturbance in the parking lot or something. So he'd gone out. So Alan happened to be walking by the phone. He picked it up, and it was like, is Alan Parsons there? Speaking, and the next thing you know, we're this totally unknown band from Los Angeles. We had nothing that he could connect of who these guys are, until Gordon Perry, who is this 5-time Grammy Award-winning classical engineer, gets on the phone with his very proper English accent. This is Gordon Perry. He had, sound for Decca Records, and he just made us sound like we were the biggest new thing in the world. And Alan happened to be coming out to LA, came to our house, and we're like practically shaking with, nervousness. And
I mean, this
we
is the
told
guy
him,
who was like there for like, Let It Be and Abbey Road and
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, he wasn't, Alan Parsons' project hadn't happened yet, but he was, anybody that knew anything about sound was starting to become aware of this guy, because Dark Side of the Moon had broken, had just made this new level of mixing that he had brought to music. So we played him what we call the rough mixes, basically
Right.
what the music was. And he listened, and we said, well, what do you think? He goes, I think it's fantastic. And I was like, well, really, what do you think? He goes, it's great. Okay. And so he agreed to mix the album. So our first album he was nominated along with the other engineers that worked on it for best engineering on the Grammy Award. And then we asked him to produce our second album, the Somewhere I've Never Traveled album, which again, he was nominated for best engineer. He didn't win, but just to get in the top 5,
yeah, right.
we were doing pretty well. And then he asked us, after we had done the second album with him, if we would want to play on a track, because he had gotten a deal with the same record company we were with, 20th Century Records, a kind of very small division of the film company. He said, I'm doing an album, and his manager, Eric Wolfson, was the main writer, and he asked us if we'd want to play on a track for him before he goes back to England. We said, sure. So we go into the studio, and he and his manager there, and his manager sits down at the piano and tries to show us the song that we're going to be recording. And he just goes on the piano, literally for about 5 minutes. He goes, doom, 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 like one note. For about so many minutes, we're thinking, is this a joke? And then he starts going, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, dun, 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 dun. The theme for the song called The Raven, which was the first track for the Alan Parsons Project. His first album was called Tales of Mystery and Imagination. But it was so top secret, and we weren't going to be the singers on it. We were just recording the backing music.
Right.
They didn't even want us to know the name of the song. They didn't want us to know what the subject matter was or anything. So I said, well, what's the song called? And he said, it's called The Raver. The Raver. I said, what's a raver? And well, the raver is it's like a streetwalker, a prostitute. And I said, oh, well, shouldn't it have a little more bump and grind than just bump? How about a bass line that goes doo-doo-doom, bump-a-bump, doo-doo-doom, bump-a-bump? Yeah, that'll work. So gradually the song gets that doo-doo-doom, bump-a-bump. And that became the beginning of developing the arrangement on the spot for the song. And it was a very complex song, but that whole beginning where it just starts with a doom, doom. See, in his mind, he knew that there was going to be this big orchestral build and all these kind of sound effects and things, but we didn't know what was going to be going on for the first few minutes of just doom, doom, doom. And then anyway, their album comes out, and that was the beginning of establishing Alan.
Wow.
And then his second album comes out, and they put out a single, I Break Down. I break down. Da, 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 da. And what is the bass line in that? Do-do-doom, dum, do-dum. So
and no credit for you?
Well, at least I know where it came from, So, and gradually it's being released to the world.
When did you know that Ambrosia had made it? I mean, I know you started out. I mean, and I want to ask you about the whole genres of music, because it seems to me like you were more prog rock, and then now there's this term yacht rock, which didn't even exist when you were having those big hits. When was the first time that you kind of said, "Geez, we're onto something here"?
Well, I think we put out the first album, and we were rehearsing to get ready to go on tour. And I remember our manager came we were rehearsing in some garage, and he comes into the garage and says, guys, your record, Holding On Yesterday, just went to #1 in Denver. And it was like, we're #1? And you look at the chart, because we had a visit to that radio station. It was like, Ambrosia, Elton John #2, the Eagles #3, and it was like, wow. It was like that kind of was like, wow, we're getting somewhere, you know.
And when you started getting like insane radio play, when was that? Was it How Much I Feel?
How Much I Feel was the one that was the first like #1 radio play. It went to #1 in the country, and it was getting played everywhere. And what's amazing, as you said, with this resurgence of yacht rock, we're still getting a tremendous amount of play on different formats that specialize in the yacht rock, you know, style.
My wife and I have Sirius XM channel 14 on all summer.
Okay.
And you and Coley and Christopher Cross have got to be the top 3, and maybe Player as far as
you're right up there. Yeah. And yeah. So How Much I Feel, You're the Only Woman, Biggest Part of Me are like just mainstays of the whole yacht rock station. But what's kind of cool now, they're actually doing, quote, a deep track yacht rock people that were known for the hits, but they're going into our catalog and they've played even some of our more progressive songs, like on yacht
I hear
rock.
Nice, very nice.
Very nice, yeah. Which was also a single out in, it wasn't a top 40 nationally, but in certain markets, it was a fairly large hit, like New York City. And if you know the story behind that, I was reading a book written by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. He was a great American author. And we were looking for new lyrics for this song that we had. We loved the music behind it, but we weren't sure about the lyrics. We were going to try some different ideas. And I was reading the book and I said, you know, I think these, it's like a poem that he had in the book. Which was the beginning of the lyrics were nice. Sleeping Drunkard, Central Park, Lion Hunter in the Jungle Dark, Chinese dentist, great, you know, nice, very nice. So many people in the same device. I said, that's kind of cool, you know? And so we went to the studio, we put those lyrics down and we thought, this is great. It really works great. Then we were going to put the album out and, you know, we're not lawyers, but somebody said, did you ever get permission from Kurt Vonnegut to use his lyrics? And I was like, no. So here we are, totally finished album, mixed by Alan Parsons, ready to go to pressings. And we have to send off the song to Kurt Vonnegut for approval. What if he says no? And we're like, oh my gosh, please. Anyway, he loved it. He sends us back a letter saying how lucky he is to be associated with us. And at the end of it, he goes, music is the only art that's worth a damn. I envy you guys. And it was like from Kurt Vonnegut. So you can imagine me having grown up being a Kurt Vonnegut fan, one of the greatest authors of the 20th century, to say that to us at the beginning of our career. We weren't anybody yet, but he was already like saying, I'm lucky to be associated with you. It's like, wow, thank you. So those are the kind of things that really stick in your head as far as moving along from, you know, starting a band. And like you said, when do you know you've made it? It's like when you start to make these kind of connections with these great engineers, amazing authors. I mean, we've even had, you know, people that we've worked with like Leonard Bernstein and people like that we got to know through our music. And it's just, it really, when you begin your career, you never even think of some of the other contacts that you might be making through your music.
Right. Yeah. When you're on stage, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. I mean, you told us it's going on 50 years for Ambrosia with some breaks. It's got to be a different feeling playing those songs today, probably, than it was then. I mean, when you look out the audience, obviously, I mean, I was born in '74, you know, so like I'm a person that knows all the words to those hits, but I wasn't there the first time. I was a little baby, and there's so many people that have discovered it later.
Right.
What is it like as a person from your point of view up on that stage and watching all those people in the audience night after night know all the words to your songs? I mean, what is that like?
No, it's great. I mean, you know, again, I think you couldn't even conceive, you know, 40 some years ago when these records came out or whatever, that people were going to be a younger crowd many times. The yacht rock has brought a different age group to. We have, you know, obviously people that were alive, you know, young when the record came out, but then it's like their grandkids are coming to the shows. You know, they're 20 years old and they know the lyrics to the songs. And it's also because our music has been used now in movies, television shows, and things like that. It gets a different kind of, people connect with it in a lot of different ways. We were watching the show Rizzoli and Isles, which is a kind of a show that's been running for a while. And they had this one episode where they're having a discussion in a bar. And the discussion goes, well, Ambrosia was one of the most underrated bands of that era. And at the end of the show, they're in the car and they're singing, "You're the biggest part of me." It's like, you never know that how your music is entrenched in people's consciousness. It's part of
It's almost like those songs are kind of in our DNA.
it's a lot of people call it this. It's the soundtrack to people's lives, because people definitely rely on music to get them through a lot of things, through tough times, through love affairs and breakups and everything. Those songs are written with all those things coming from our experiences, or sometimes you imagine the experiences of other people, or it's that you have an open palette to paint pictures when you write songs, which is kind of cool. You can write about as goofiest things you can think of. Like you probably saw the movie Bohemian Rhapsody.
Of course.
And when the record company's listening to the first song, they're going, "What the heck is this?" All this, it's, but the music was so great and it was so well done. I think people can interpret that song any way they want, but what was it really about? I guess young guy kills a guy talking to his mom, but then it goes on all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, it's just so strong. It becomes a great story. And you envision it when you hear the music that paints the pictures along with it.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this yacht rock thing, because obviously the term didn't exist until 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in that vicinity. Right. When did you first hear that term, and were you surprised that like all of a sudden your music was redefined with this new title?
I think the first time I heard the term yacht rock was the guys that were doing kind of a YouTube comedy sketch.
Right.
And they had two guys that were impersonating Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald.
Yep.
And there was all these just little skits of them running around doing goofy stuff. And that was the first I've heard about yacht rock. And I guess somebody picked up on that thing because, of course, Kenny and Michael are, the godfathers practically of yacht rock. And suddenly it became yacht rock. And I always ask the audience of how many people in the audience actually have a yacht. Not everybody, of course. Sometimes a few. Maybe in this Quamacut, you'll have a few stationed off the coast there.
Right. It doesn't matter. It's a state of mind. Yeah. I actually have a band called Caswell and the Peel and Eats. Don't ask how I got the name. But we've been doing a lot of yacht rock, and we just wrote our first song and put it out called Coconut Kevin. So we're kind of in that vibe too. But there's a band opening for you guys that is so excited to open for you. They're called the Yacht Lobsters.
I've heard they're great. I've heard
they are.
In fact, we're trying to figure out if their saxophonist might step in with us and do the sax parts like on Biggest Part of Me. And there's also a little bit of saxophone on You're the Only Woman. So we're trying to work out the details that we might have them join us.
That would be awesome.
I've heard they're fantastic. Whatever. I've heard some great stuff about them.
They are. I said, what is gonna fit to be a good opener for Ambrosia? Now, tell us about. So John Forcoli is a big friend of Mesquamacut Beach. He actually, we've known each other a long time. He actually played at my wedding, which was awesome. He was there.
Wow.
And,
okay.
But he pretty much comes here every summer and plays one of our shows. In fact, he was here in July, and I said, "You play with Ambrosia a lot. Why don't you come back?" And tell us about your relationship with John, and when you guys obviously go way back, but long before I met him.
Well, the first time we actually met John, believe it or not, was in the Philippines. What's called yacht rock has a very big following in the Philippines. They love ballads and they love to sing along. They're all musicians, it seems, there, and singers. So we were on a show where he was on the show. It was that first time I think we met him, and gosh, that goes back. It's probably 20 years ago. And then we started forming the idea of doing a show with multiple acts, different. Usually, it's going to be solo artists like John now, but we would learn all the backing tracks for everybody. We would play our songs and bring in people like John Ford Coley, and we just did a show with Walter Egan. So we do Magnet and Steel and his song. We did Elliot Lurie. We did Brandy. So of course you said Peter Beckett with Player. We do Baby Come Back. So it's a show focused on the yacht rock sound, and that has been very successful. And when you mention how there's a new phenomenon with yacht rock, that's where I think we're bringing in an extraordinary range of people's ages. Very young people now are coming to the shows, along with, like I said, our older fans.
So a couple questions, because I know we've kept you long enough. But next week, first of all, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Joe from Ambrosia, who's going to be bringing the band to Mesquamaket Beach next week. First time ever playing in Mesquamaket. We saw you a year or two ago in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, at the maybe the Stadium Theater or something, and you guys put on an awesome show. But when people come to see Ambrosia in the year 2023, tell us who the band members are and tell us what they can expect in one of your shows.
Well, we have three of the original guys. The legacy guys are myself, Burley Drummond, who's been with us since 1970, Chris North, again, 1970. All those years, we're still hanging together. We have three other members that have been with us, two of them for many, many years. One is Burley's wife, Mary Harris, who, when you mentioned Jimmy Buffett, she was with Jimmy Buffett for 5 years as part of the Coral Reefer Band. Matter of fact, she arranged the background vocals on 3 of his albums, and she was with him. And of course, it hit her pretty hard with Jimmy passing. And the other member is Doug Jackson, extraordinary guitar player who's been with us over 20 years. And the newest guy, he's been with us a little over 3 years, is a guy named Kip Lennon. And Kip is a well-known vocalist who comes from a family of musicians and singers. He's the youngest of 12. His older sisters were the Lennon sisters, who were the vocalists for many years on the Lawrence Welk Show, who became an American icon. So he grew up with that kind of a background. And he has a band with his cousins and brother, and they're called Venice. And they became kind of known when David Crosby was doing in an interview, his favorite band in the world was Venice. And they're known, again, as great background singers. And they've been hired by Roger Waters to do the tours for The Wall and things like that. They're known for their singing. So Kip Lennon is the other more or less co-lead vocalist with myself. And Mary sings leads as well, and Burley does too. But we're basically built around the 3 core members, these 3 other people that are all amazingly talented people. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So we're going to see you next Friday night at Mesquamaket Beach at Fallfest with the Yacht Lobsters first, and maybe their saxophone player is going to make their way into your band for a couple
hours. Well, hopefully we can work that out. Yeah.
And then John Ford Coley is going to be coming up and doing his Really Love to See It Tonight, Nights Are Forever Without You, We'll Never Have to Say whatever, all those great songs.
Yeah, actually, the song that has incredible saxophone, if he knows it, is Love Is the Answer.
Yes.
If we do that, because we usually back him on those songs. He does some solo, and then we'll come up and we'll back him on most of the ones you just mentioned. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, we're looking forward to seeing you guys, and hopefully the weather's going to be great next week. Right, today it's like
has to be.
Yeah, right. Today's like 85 degrees and sunny, like summer just kicked in here for us. But we'll see what happens next week. And I'm going to get that interview dubbed so that I can hand you the interview from 25 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. That's pretty great. Cool.
Well, we look forward to seeing you on Friday, and we'll welcome you to Mesquamaket Beach. Joe, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, folks. Once again, Fallfest, we're going to be on every night this week. We're going to be interviewing all the people that are going to be playing. We're going to be interviewing some of the vendors. We're going to be interviewing some of the people putting the festival on. But make sure you grab your tickets if you want to reserve seat up front. for Ambrosia. Otherwise, general admission gets you in and you can watch the show. But if you want a seat, you got to go to eventbrite.com and get a ticket in advance for a seat for Ambrosia, John Ford Coley, Friday night. And they'll go on around 8-ish, 8:30-ish on the main stage. So for everyone here in Mesquamacut, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow night with another show.
Bring the kids, bring Grandma and Grandpa, heck, bring everyone, and come to the Mesquamacut Fallfest in Westerly September 15th, 16th, and 17th at Mesquamacut State Beach. You'll find an array of great food trucks, arts and craft vendors, games, rides, and a Ferris wheel. Friday night, internet sensations the Jay Creek Cloggers will perform, as well as Ambrosia with special guest John Ford Coley. Saturday night, it's Mac McAnally, 10-time CMA Music Award winner. It's an endless summer at Mesquamacut Beach with Fallfest. Mesquamacut.org.